Yeah, good afternoon, participants. I welcome you all to session 2 of day 5 of this faculty development program on buried energy for conservation and energy management. Today we have with us Ms. Shabnam Bassi ma'am as our expert speaker. Ms. Shabnam Bassi ma'am is a fellow and associate director, GRIHA Council at the Energy and Resource Institute, TERI, and secretary with the GRIHA Council, which administers the green rating for integral habitat assessment. Prior to joining TERI, she has worked with the United Nations Development Programme for nearly 5 years as assistant project manager. She has been engaged to implement strategies to overcome barriers related to energy efficiency in building sector in the country by coordinating with the central, state, and municipal bodies to facilitate ECBC integration, develop a framework to strengthen enforcement of ECBC implementation and compliance. She has been the key person in developing rules and regulations for ECBC implementation and demonstration projects for ECBC compliance. Participants, ECBC stands for Energy Conservation Building Code. She has worked with Bureau of Energy Efficiency for 5 years. She was associated with the scheme related to promotion and implementation of energy efficiency in commercial buildings through adoption of the Energy Conservation Building Code in the built environment. She has worked in close cooperation with various international agencies and experts in developing programs related to enhancement of government policies for promoting energy efficiency in buildings. She was the lead person for scanning of the developments in the Indian construction sector, particularly those related to the building energy and green buildings, events, projects, policies, regulatory developments, etc. Apart from this, she has been in the Indian PMU on development of templates for public buildings in collaboration with state governments. So on behalf of BNB Institute of Technology, the organizing committee of this faculty development program and all the participants, I welcome you, ma'am, and I request you to enlighten us with your experience and your knowledge, ma'am. Please, ma'am.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you once again for having me for today's lecture. And it will be a great time interacting with all of you. Just as a matter of, I was just getting inquisitive. Are there more people to join? Because right now I see just 6 to 7 people over there. Should we wait for others to join, or are they into some other lecture?
No, ma'am. We have somewhere around 80 to 90 participants regularly participating in this program.
Okay.
I think I'll just post a message in the group so that everyone joins. Okay, ma'am?
Right, because I don't want to begin and then people join, because sometimes the presentation is interesting if people start from the beginning, and
Yes, yes,
probably
yes.
there is some presentation already going on and they may be having the last.
No, 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 ma'am. I'll just message. I'll just put one more message in the group.
Sure.
Just a minute, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We can begin, ma'am.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
So a very good afternoon to all of you. And with this, I would, as introduced, would be taking today's session on green buildings and sustainability. And just to give you a brief on what we do, we are basically a rating organization. We deal into rating of green buildings, but before I really take you to the concepts of green buildings, I would like to give you a brief background as to why we want to do green buildings. Uh, Hello.
Madam,
Yes, ma'am.
any audio problems there?
I thought I joined from some other place also. That is the reason that it got disconnected. Anyway, I think
Okay.
I'm
Okay,
back.
madam, you may continue. Okay.
All right.
Ma'am, if you are joining from two devices, then probably we'll need to make both the devices as a presenter. So I'll just.
No, that's okay. I was just trying to share my screen and
Okay.
accidentally I pushed that button. Just a minute.
Okay, ma'am, no issue.
Just let me know if my screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am. We can see your screen, but it's not full screen. It's not. Yeah. Now it's visible. Yes.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So as introduced, I am the Associate Director with TERI and Secretary and Treasurer with the GRIHA Council. And today we will be going through the concepts of sustainability and green buildings, how it is important and why we should go deeper into understanding the various aspects of sustainability. So we all are aware that we are urbanizing at a very, very fast pace. If we compare ourselves to the numbers of 1950, we were just 746 million people at that time, and we have grown to nearly 309 billion people in the year 2014, and we are expected to be 603 billion people by 2050 in the urban spaces. So, what is global information in terms of urbanization? I think it is quite evident that 90% of this growth, as we see, is expected in basically Asian and African countries by 2015, where we are going to grow nearly 56% in the Asian countries and 64% in African countries. So this is how we have progressed since 1950. The graph below over here, it basically shows the urban trends, and the graph that is going below or it's declining, it's basically the rural trends. So this is how the population has progressed since 1950 in terms of this is of course in million population. So 1990 there were nearly 10 mega cities, where nearly 10 million people were inhabiting the cities, and these number of mega cities are going to be nearly 41 by the year 2030. So as urban spaces are increasing, it's clearly evident that the rural population is declining. So more and more people are basically migrating to urban spaces, which basically indicates that since a lot of us are going to be migrating to urban spaces, we will need more people, we will need more housing. If it is going to be more housing, then there is going to be a lot of depletion of resources. Urban spaces will need more infrastructure will mean that we will need to know how to manage these resources in a better way. So this is the population growth trend since 1990, and this is how we are growing exponentially. There is a vision of the government of India, and there are various schemes of the government of India, which includes the Smart City Mission, the Amrut Bharat, the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, and the Swachh Bharat, which are all aligned to providing the basic infrastructure, efficient urban spaces, and improved quality of life. In addition to that, they are also creating lighthouses for replicable models which can be replicated in various cities of the country. So this is the vision in which the government is thinking, or have framed these rules so that we can match the expectations of the upcoming the urban spaces that are expected by the year 2050. Now, in order to make the cities livable, it is quite evident that we need to have a balanced quality of life. We need to be not only environmentally sustainable, but we also need to be economically stable, as well as effective governance is something that's expected from a smart city. So nearly 116 cities were ranked in the order of quality of life, and they offered based on the 79 parameters. So if I ask the basic definition of livability, would anyone like to raise hands, or would like to be participative in today's presentation and would spell out what does livability mean to you, or in general, if you have heard this word anywhere? Would you like to say anything on it? And for all the participants that are there?
Yeah, participants can post their answers in the chat box, and I would request Soni sir, if he is available, to read them out.
Okay, so I don't hear a lot of people saying anything. Are we getting some answers?
Madam, actually only few people have been made presenter. So if you want any response, they will respond in the chat box.
Okay, so are we getting any responses on the chat box?
Okay,
I wanted to make this interactive, this presentation to be interactive, so that, if there are any doubts, if there's something that comes to their mind, we can interact, two-way.
Yes, madam. I'll also inform them in the WhatsApp chat group also, so that if anything comes up, I'll tell you.
Right. Okay. So anyway, so when we talk about livability, it's basically a composition of social, economic, and civic factors that directly determine the willingness of a person to reside in a city. Hence, it is basically the potential of a city to attract human resources, and then consequently, attracting the industry, in a particular city. So overall, the overall well-being of a particular city is defined by a lot of factors, and that is what I was mentioning over here, that there are basically 79 parameters on which this decision is taken, and the various cities of in fact the world are ranked based on these parameters. So India has also developed its livability index criterias, and I encourage all of you to have a look at what livability should mean to all of us, and the publications are listed right below here. You can reach out and read more about that. Now we come to a basic questions, that why should cities be sustainable? If we look at the sector-wise emissions in Indian cities in the year 2007, 2008, so basically, these are all the areas where energy has been used. So if we largely look at, we are using most of the energy in the industrial side, then residential and commercial buildings, they nearly account for 30 to 40% of the energy, and very little energy is being used in the rural and other sectors. So it clearly is an indicator of the fact that the urban spaces are huge guzzlers of energy, and because the progress has been made in urban areas, so that is quite evident that the reasons why energy is consumed in urban areas. Now, since we have this in front of us, it is very clearly understood that why it is important for us to be managing cities in a better way, in a way which is more acceptable, and in a way which is more if we can provide sustainable energy in future in a sustainable way to all of us. So cities consume over 2/3 of the world's energy and account for more than 70% of the global CO2 emissions. Buildings use nearly 40% of the energy, 25% of the global water, and 40% of the global resources. So, in a way, what we are trying to say over here is that the reason why we need to be very careful in the way we are designing our buildings, the way we are constructing our buildings, because because all the resources that are mentioned over here, be it forest, be it water, be it other resources, they are depleting at a very, very fast pace. If we start consuming these resources in our buildings which are not sustainable, then we will not be left with a lot of it to be shared with the future generation. So it is a huge impact on the society. That is the reason it is important that we should be constructing buildings in a more responsible manner, so that we are in future able to pass on something to the next generation. Now, what is the need of buildings? Basically, when we talk only about buildings, they protect us from climate. But when we talk about green buildings, they protect us from climate and provide comfort. Now, comfort is a very, very important word in a green building, because for each one of us, comfort may mean differently. For you, it may mean just visual comfort, but for some people, it may mean thermal comforts, acoustic comforts, indoor air quality, and visual comfort. So basically, a green building is one which takes care of all the four comforts in a building. That is the thermal comforts, the acoustic comforts, the visual comforts, and the indoor air quality. And more or less, you will all understand this aspect, that if a building is not thermally comfortable, or is not visually comfortable, or you do not have the right amount of air coming into your building, you are not, no matter how expensive the building is constructed, or it has been constructed in a way that's in the most thickly populated parts of the country, but if it is not comfortable, you will not feel like living out of that project. So when we design buildings, we have to take care of all these four aspects, that we design a building in such a way that it takes care of all these four parameters. I would have asked questions on this slide, but I have some limitations in terms of the kind of interactions I can have with all of you. But just to give you a number, the kind of climatic zones that are existing in the world. So I have put this slide basically to show that there are more than 28 climatic zones in the world, and each climatic zone, or each kind of climate, it requires different kind of construction, different kinds of ways the buildings are constructed. Now, we all know that we fall under the tropical belt. Now, let us compare how we are designing, or what kind of climatic map is available in the country. Although there are 11 climatic zones that are defined in India, but because bulk of the climatic zones fall under these 5 major heads, so the Indian National Building Council have identified, or have basically divided the whole country into the 5 major climatic zones, that is composite, hot and dry, warm and humid, temperate and cold. So we basically fall under these 5 major climatic zones of the country. For the rest of the climatic zones, we have listed them down in the map itself. So when we are comparing ourselves, we always like to compare ourselves with the US. And this is something that we have tried to depict for all of you, that in terms of land areas, we are less than half of US. But in terms of population, we are double or more than double of US. But we always try to make buildings, or we always try to structure ourselves as per US. So, there is no apple to apple comparison, because in terms of land masses, there is, we are having scarcity of land. In terms of population, we are overpopulated country. So this is a city-wise classification comparing various big cities with with the areas, along with comparable land use and population densities. Now, New York is almost comparable to Mumbai in terms of land mass, but in terms of population, or in terms of the kind of population densities that we have, Mumbai is much more than New York. Similarly, for other cities of Chicago, or even Dubai, we have listed out here, and other cities. So when we start comparing, the kind of resources we have, the kind of land masses we have, it is not easy for us to be comparing ourselves with any part of the world, because we are quite limited in terms of this land space that is available to us. We don't have the luxury to construct buildings because the populations that we are looking at are quite large, and we have to design our projects in such a way that we are able to meet the requirements of all of us. So when we compare ourselves, it is something that is not acceptable, because that gives us a wrong image. So this is basically how the population density per square meter is. If New York is 1800 per square meters, then Mumbai is 32,000. So leave about the entire country, only Mumbai itself is 32,000 per square meters as compared to New York. So how are we comparing ourselves to any developed nation when the population statistics are quite different from anywhere in the world? Even in terms of variations in temperature, if we compare Mumbai to New York, the maximum temperatures that we observe in Mumbai is 39.6. It also goes up to 42, 43 sometimes. Well, New York is designed for -3, -2, and it reaches maximum to 21, 20 degrees, when there are peak heat gains in New York. Similarly, Delhi, when compared to Los Angeles, the maximum temperatures in Delhi, we have seen that it touches 50 degrees, 49 degrees a lot of times, and Los Angeles at the same time is not anywhere beyond 17 or 18 degrees anytime, during the year. Similarly, Chennai and Chicago, they are designed for -7, and in Chennai, the weathers are 46, 47. Bangalore, Houston, again, is like, in Bangalore, the weathers are like maximum 34, 35, but then, we are not designing more than 18, 19 degrees for Houston. So these are the various variations in temperature profiles of various big cities of the world. But then what are we designing? So if I would have asked you, you would have said that, all these buildings are based out of India, but this is just based out of New York or some other place. But I would like to inform you, all of you, that these buildings are based out of India, and we have started aping buildings from the West. Now, when we talk about glass buildings, all the buildings that you see here, first of all, we don't know which city are these buildings designed for. Secondly, I think the one major reason why we should not be designing such buildings is that we are using a lot of glass, and the basic property of a glass is that it traps a lot of heat. Now, we just saw in countries like Chicago or cities like Chicago or New York, where they have temperatures of -3, -4, or even -7 to some times of the year. Now, constructing a glass building in such cities, it makes sense because glass has the basic property where it traps a lot of heat. Now, when it traps a lot of heat, it is able to keep that building warm for a lot of time of the day. So they don't have to require a lot of heating loads because their buildings will be thermally more comfortable if they have glass, and they will have trapped heat to keep that building warmer. But when we construct such a building in India, which has a lot of glass, it will basically mean that the same glass is going to trap a lot of heat, which means that a country like, or a city like Delhi, in which we are already soaring in 46, 47 degrees, the inside of the building will feel like 50 plus because of the trapped heat. We are feeling even warmer than what it is outside. So it doesn't make any sense to be making any glass structures here, because basically when we make buildings that are made of full glass, it will trap heat, it will trap glare, and we will have to have equivalent cooling loads. So basically we will have to have higher amount of air conditioning for our buildings to keep that building cooler. So, instead of aping buildings from the West and blindly copying designs from the West and looking at only aesthetics of the building, it became extremely important, in the year 2004 and 5, when India started looking at, putting some sense into how the buildings were getting constructed in our country. So they made some regulations. They put in some regulations in place where the amount of glass that could be used in a building, the quality of glass, how much glass can go into a building, all these were captured, and we had made a unified building code which said that how the buildings would be constructed in future if the buildings were to use glass. So that is how the Energy Conservation Building Code came into being in the year 2007, when the Government of India, under the Ministry of Power, they formulated these rules and regulations to ensure that the buildings of future were designed keeping certain norms in mind and not just blindly copying designs from the West. So, going a bit deeper into the design aspects or the climate conditions of the country, we all know that the hot and dry climate condition of the country, we have high temperatures with low humidity and very less rainfall. It has intense solar radiation and generally clear sky, hot winds during the day and cold winds at the night. So I will not go into details of each climatic zones, but I'm just comparing this with one of the another climatic zone, that is, let us compare it with a moderate temperature. A moderate temperature and a high temperature, the difference is that it will have moderate humidity and rainfall. The solar radiations will remain throughout the same over the year, and the sky is generally clear. It will have high winds during summer, depending upon the topography. But I think what we are trying to depict, by giving you a detail of the various climatic conditions of the country, is that the way we design a building for a hot and dry climatic zone will be very different from how we should design a building for warm and humid or composite or temperate. So it is very essential to know that if we are designing a building in south, it will behave differently. It will have because the humidity levels are higher, maybe the air conditioning dependency will be more, or the kind of cooling that will be required in a hot and dry condition will be water based cooling, and what we use in a humid climatic condition will be not a water based cooling. So these are the things that will play a vital role in understanding the technologies, because even if there are 10 or 15 technologies available, we cannot just blindly pick up anything from the pocket and start using it in a building. It will largely be affected by the climatic conditions of the country. So now, how should we design a building? So basically, a building should be designed in such a way that it takes care of the microclimate of that particular region. So now we all know that the microclimate of a particular region, that is how that particular area will behave normally, will basically come from the greenery of that area, the water that is absorbed by the trees, and the greener aspects of that area. Then we should design buildings in such a way that it's suitable for daylighting, avoiding solar gain, enhanced solar roof radiations, efficient lighting, increased airspeed. So these are the aspects that will help us improve the microclimate of that particular building. So basically, we'll have to minimize cooling and heating loads, improve the microclimate, enhance the occupants' visual and thermal comforts. Now, currently, the way we are designing the buildings, we are, giving very less importance to the way we are designing a building, because people don't want to pay a lot of money to the designers, and they are spending a lot on marketing. So basically, this means that they are more concentrating on the aesthetics of the building. Then, even in terms of constructions, it is observed that the kind of materials that are being used in a project, they are not of that quality, or are not having the sustainability aspects built into the materials. They are compromising with the a lot of aspects in terms of materials, or in terms of sustainability, in terms of recyclability, and they want to construct in a building in a minimal cost. So now then what happens once the building is constructed? Then the repair works start to begin immediately after 4 or 5 years of occupancy of the project. So basically, your operations and maintenance costs go higher. So over the life of the project, we have seen in a lot of projects that because a lot of money was intended that we have to construct a building at a low cost, with ensuring that we can save money on design and construction. But what we have observed is then that money is basically not saved, but a lot of money gets wasted in the operations and maintenance of the projects. On the contrary, if we are spending good amount on designing a sustainable project which takes care of low impact and passive design features, in which we are also marketing it in such a way that people are aware of the green features of a project, and we are also ensuring that we are aware of the kind of construction materials that go into constructing a green building, then what we have observed usually in the cases when we go for our audits and surveys, we have with our own experience, we have seen that the operation and the maintenance costs are the minimal. So we have to look at the overall, when we buy a project or when we basically occupy a commercial or a residential space, we as a user should ensure that we are aware of all these aspects, and not only go by the first cost uniqueness and see that, oh, this, yeah, I'm getting it at a very, very cheap cost, so it is affordable to me. What you should also try and understand that how the design is, what kind of materials are being used in a building, and will this building be giving me the right kind of comforts that I'm expecting. So that will basically mean that your operation and maintenance costs, have to be, you have to go through into details of the documents that are submitted by the builder or by the person who's selling you the project, to understand as to what kind of efforts were made in designing that project. So if we take care of these aspects, even though the design cost may be slightly higher, during the beginning we may feel that, but because any commercial building, even if you look around, will stay here for at least 100 years, you are able to recover this cost within a span of 4 to 5 years, because a green and an efficient house, it basically, the running costs are very less in terms of energy, in terms of water, in terms of maintenance. So and of course, above all is the comfort. So it basically takes care of the overall well-being of a person who's occupying this project. So we have to understand that how conventional buildings are designed, why we are encouraging more people to go towards efficient houses or green buildings, because basically we may have all felt that conventional buildings are resource intensive. So in terms of land, water, raw materials, energy, we have seen that they use very high in terms of percentage. The percentage graph is shown below. And also in terms of emissions, the CO2 emissions are high, the solid waste generation is even high, even the water effluents are very high. So there is no point in at least today's world, when the resources are depleting at a very, very fast pace, that it is not at all important to be investing in conventional buildings. So this is basically to give you a rough understanding, or in a nutshell, to explain what are the various features of a green building. So an efficient building or a green buildings use efficient use of energy, water, and other resources. They use excessive use of renewable energy such as solar. A green building will help you have pollution and waste reduction measures, and will thereby enable the reuse and recycling of waste. A green building no doubt has very good indoor air quality. The use of materials are such that are non-toxic and are sustainable in nature. The design of the building is such that the environmental conditions are taken care of. Now, we have seen in a lot of projects that when we make a project, or especially in commercial projects, what we have seen is that when a developer buys a patch of land, he tries to clear the entire land and starts constructing on a fresh patch. But what we as green experts promote is that we should try and do minimum destruction of the environment and try and preserve as many trees and greenery as we can, or in fact the natural resources, like if there are any water bodies, or the natural growing big trees that are there, if we can naturally preserve them, that is the best case to construct green buildings, because it is always healthy to be living out of as close as possible to the environment. So this is what we mean by a good design. So we should consider the environmental aspects in design, construction, as well as operation of the project. Then consideration of quality of life of occupants in design. Of course, when we construct a green building, we ensure that the thermal, acoustic, visual, all the aspects are taken care of, and this is how the quality of life of the occupant also enhances. A design that enables adaptations to the changing environment. So as the environment will keep changing, your design will be done in such a way that it will keep adapting itself. So you don't have to do a lot of changes yourself. Your building will take care of the changes by its own. So a design, sustainable design as well conceived process. If we have greater awareness and sensitivity, knowledge and understanding, attitude and concern, skills to identify, and we are participative and we lead by the front, and we are completely involved in a process, we will be able to do justice to the project. Use little resources as possible as we can, move away from linear take, make and waste model rather than be on the circular path, and work on a circular economy, and also in which the concept of waste is eliminated, because every waste product is a raw material or a nutrient for another industry. So we are always promoting this, that we cannot make a project and start dumping waste at a new site, because ultimately that new site will also be occupied by somebody else. So if we start using the same material within our project, it will not only be sustainable but will also be economically viable to all of us. Live off nature's interest, not its capital. Use nature resources only at the rate they can self-generate. So, this is a very, very important aspect, that, nature has given us a few things as a gift, and it is not something that we have inherited from somewhere. So it becomes our responsibility, and equally we are responsible for the way we are seeing the kind of climate change events are happening, be it floods, be it cyclones, be it landslides, all these aspects. We as humans are completely responsible for it, and we should take the responsibility for it and ensure that such destructions, if not stopped in future, will harm us in a way that we will never be able to take that, recover that. We should imbibe ideas of sustainable forestry, fishing and agriculture in such a way that we are giving something back to the society. Now, this is a very, very interesting graph that we have prepared, which will make the aspects of sustainability very, very easy to understand. Now, under each circle, we have put in certain parameters. Like, we all know that environment, when we talk about environmental concerns, it basically talks about natural resources, environmental management, pollution prevention. That is our planet. Economics is to do with profits, so profits, costs, savings, economic growth, etc. Social, if we look at it in isolation, it basically means education, community, standard of living, equal opportunities to all. So this is about people. So we are talking about three things: planet, people, and profit. Now, if you start bringing the two bubbles together, so we at all spheres, so we get socio-economic aspects, socio-environmental aspects, and environmental economic impacts. So when we talk about socio-economic, it is basically we are combining social with economic benefits. So basically we get fair trade, worker rights, business ethics. When we combine environment with social, we get socio-environmental benefits. So basically these are environmental justice, local and global natural resource stewardship. And similarly, when we combine environment with economics, we get the environmental economics. So basically energy efficiency. So we start talking about numbers. So how do we combine environment with economics is a great way to understand how we can be economically viable for environmental projects. So your subsidies, your incentives, your energy efficiency projects, they all fall under this category. Now, if we combine all the three aspects in one umbrella, that is how you get sustainability. So basically, sustainability is a combination of environmental, social, as well as economic aspects of the society. And if we are able to achieve all the three aspects together, this is how we can achieve sustainability. So this is what, in a nutshell, we have tried to explain in this slide. So I don't know how many of you are aware of it, but there are 17 sustainable development goals that we have to align ourselves. These are the global goals that each one of us should be aware of. First is, of course, there should be no poverty, zero hunger, good health, well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, then a decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation, structure, reduced inequalities. So these are all the 11, 12 or 17 goals that are there listed out by the global sustainability goal parameters. These are based on various aspects of our growth, and we have to ensure as a country that we are aligning ourselves to most of the goals that are listed here. Now, when we talk about sustainability, this is how we have listed ourselves. If we are constructing green buildings and are improving people's health and well-being through it, we are basically targeting the good health and well-being. So the sustainability goal, global goal. If we have green buildings and we can use renewable energy and become cheaper to run, we are basically targeting goal 7, that is affordable and clean energy. If we are building green infrastructure and creating jobs, boost the economy, we are basically doing the decent job and economic growth aspect of the SDG goal index that we had just shown you. If we are making green buildings that are fabric of sustainable communities and cities, it is clearly indicative of goal 11, that is sustainable cities and communities. Green buildings use circular economy that I just explained, with circular principles where resources aren't wasted. We are being responsible consumption and production. So we are responsibly using the resources and are producing it in such a way that we are able to recycle them. Green buildings produce fewer emissions, helping to combat climate change. So basically, this clearly is related to climate action goal number 13. Green buildings can improve biodiversity, save water resources, and help protect the forest. This is life on land. So we are basically how close we are to the environment. This is what green buildings are promoting. Through green buildings, we create stronger global partnerships. So this is when we become green, we are able to do a lot of multilateral and bilateral partnerships with other countries where we align ourselves to the sustainability goals of others. We learn from each other. We share technologies. We share our experience and help the other countries, or gain their wisdom in designing various principles of sustainability in our country. So this are basically partnership goals of SDG goals that I were listed. So in a nutshell, I think what we have explained in this slide is that once you are constructing or once you are in this area of green buildings, and no matter how much we are listening or talking about it, we have still a lot of work to be done under this area. And definitely, not only there is scope for us, where we are there already as experts in the industry, but still there are a number of aspects that are yet to be done. We need more experts, more such trainings, more such people to be coming in this area. And what we have observed, and there was a recent survey being conducted, that more and more youngsters are aligning themselves to the such aspects of sustainability and are choosing these as futuristic, their professions in the coming times. So in the next 10 or 15 years, I'm sure the cadre of professionals that we are going to have are mostly going to be from the green building industry, be it directly or indirectly, but eventually we will have to ensure that the natural resources that are depleting at a fast pace, we all are being contributing sustainably to it, and we as individuals are going to be the basic strength to be being part of this great mission. So now let us see what do the green building professionals do. So we have listed out for the sake of understanding of all of you that we have been talking about sustainability for quite some time in this presentation now. Now let us understand that what role does each stakeholder or each professional play in this industry. Now, if we talk about urban planners and developers, considering the urban context, so they are there basically to design the community connectivity and transportation. Now, when we talk about green buildings, your transportation and how the connections are there within the city, it becomes extremely important. So how your urban spaces are designed, because we have seen when a new city comes up, we always feel that the connectivity is very low. There is no metro line. There are bus services are not available. We are expected to go by our own personal conveyance to a lot of places. So that becomes a major part of urban planner's responsibility, that when a new project comes up or a new urban space is designed, it is designed in such a way that it has enough, such arrangements made that the transportation is there and a person doesn't has to face day-to-day commuting issues. So if I have to, save carbon footprint, then and I cannot be using my own vehicle to be, going every day, on my individual basis. I need to have public transports available like the metro stations or the bus services or the common services that are available, and of course at a cheaper rate. So these are the things that fall under the scope of urban planners. The next in line are the civil engineers. They ensure that the building and the site works well with the surroundings. So now when I just explained that when we get a patch of land, we start clearing the trees and the greenery on that piece of land, and we start dumping in our material on that site and start constructing a concrete box. So now that becomes essential role of a civil engineer and a landscape architect to ensure that it has minimized ecological impact and the site work is designed in such a way that they do not have less damage to the ecological or the surroundings. Similarly, the landscape architect will ensure that the connect between the building and the natural environment is always there. He or she has to design parks and vegetations in such a way that the natural beauty of that place is preserved and we feel that we are living very close to the environment and not living in a concrete box where roads are laid, a concrete building is created, and artificially we have just planted a few plants here and there to ensure that, or just to give a tick box that we have done the green aspects of the building. So if we preserve our trees, or if we are able to preserve any water body around our project, or do any justice to the natural beauty of that place, that becomes essential part of a landscape architect. Similarly, an architect and an interior designer's role is basically to ensure that a building design plays a major or impactful role in ensuring that building is everlasting. So, an interior designers and architects, they basically design an efficient as well as well thought or well considered interiors are designed, uh, ensuring that the human comforts are maintained at all levels. The mechanical engineers will ensure that there is fresh air to the occupants. So there has to be a provision of natural ventilation or efficiency filtering being provided in the building. Facility managers are there, which will ensure that low impact maintenance is there in a project. Real estate professionals negotiate lease that create a win-win for both landlords and tenants. So there are a lot of policies that are existing in the government, in which there are rebate in taxes that could be, provided to the end user. You could get a property tax rebate. You could get other benefits from the government, which government is ensuring that, once you are there, you get the least impacted by the by such by the environmental aspects of the building. So these are the things that a real estate professional will definitely know that are there around, and should be able to provide those to the end user, because the end user will not know all the policies, because we are not aware of all the aspects what are there in the government. A green buildings consultant role is extremely important in today's world, because he's the bridge between all these people and helps us to connect. So their role basically is typically to, maximize the greenness of a project, and at each level guide and also ensure by way of monitoring progress of each one of them, and ensure that progress is made in all aspects. So a green building consultant basically plays a bridge between all these people that have been listed above. So when we talk about any green buildings, these are all the professionals that become part of not only green buildings, in general also. These are all the professionals that are part of constructing a project. So now it is very important that all of these professionals are connected with one another. If I am designing a green building, then a mechanical engineer, a facility manager, your architect, your green building specialist, as well as your urban planner, civil engineers, all have to be aligned. So this is a very, very important aspect to understand in a building, that even if I do a good design, my design will fail if my civil engineer or the architect hasn't implemented it in the way I had designed it. So then my design has failed. If my facility manager has not maintained my building the way it was constructed, even then my design has failed. So when we construct a green building, or when we are understanding the various concepts of green building, it is important that all of them, they understand the importance of constructing a green building, and then they work together. So this word that I'm using, that we have to work together, or work in a way that it enhances the other professionals' work, is the important link between success and failure, because a good design is successful only when it is implemented in the right honestness in the project. So these are the various sustainability frameworks that are available in our country, which are giving a push to sustainable or green buildings in our country. So we have, first of all, the National Mission on Sustainable Habitat, that is governed at the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs level. Then we have the 100 Smart Cities program across the country that's successfully running. Then we have the state level mandates on green building. So each state, the buildings are governed at the state level. So each state has its own policy to govern the buildings that they want to. So different cities will have different policies for each city. So a policy that may be existing in Haryana may be very different from the way it is implemented in Maharashtra. So vice versa, policies that are in Uttar Pradesh will be very different from what is there in Bangalore. So each state has its way of judging what will work in their state, and they take out certain regulations and give benefits to the end user. The Energy Conservation Building Code, as I had initially mentioned in my presentation, was basically designed to ensure that buildings that were coming up post 2001 and 2 were constructed in such a way that they were not heavily dependent on glass, and they wanted to basically bring in some sense into how glass was being used, how energy was basically consumed in a building. So, Conservation Building Code was developed under the Ministry of Power. They had set up this Bureau of Energy Efficiency, under which these codes were prepared. So, these codes are mandated all across the country, and each state has modified this to suit their local climatic condition. So now ECDC codes are mandated in all the states of the country. Then we have the National Mission on Enhanced Energy Efficiency to provide market-based mechanism to promote energy efficiency. Under the voluntary section, green buildings are still voluntary, so each state has its own way of promoting it. As I just mentioned, that certain states have given incentives on green buildings. Some states have also given incentives like FARs or 10%, up to 15% of extra floor area ratio, which is quite lucrative for the green building experts, and then they go in for green projects. We have a very successful B star rating for buildings. This is for existing buildings. B rating for appliances. We all are aware of the labels that we are seeing on all the appliances, which gives how much energy your appliance consumes. So that is under the Bureau of Energy Efficiency. We have the Energy Efficiency Services Limited, that is implementing arm of the Ministry of Power. So all the policies that are created by the Bureau of Energy Efficiency are implemented by Energy Efficiency Services Limited. Then there are various energy service companies, which are in short or more popularly known as ESCOs. So these are organizations which help you reduce your electricity bills. They help you create baselines. They create energy audits of your building and suggest ways of reducing energy consumptions in your buildings. So these organizations are called ESCO. So there are various models which are available in the country through which we can achieve sustainability. So this was my first part of the presentations. Any questions so far by now? By any one of you?
Yes, ma'am. There are a couple of questions.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, Professor Rajendra Varya is asking, is green building possible in conjugate cities like Ahmedabad, Mumbai, or is it is the cost very high in such circumstances?
That's a very good question. Thank you for that question. I'm glad that people are active listeners here. And what I would like to, in short, like to answer that question is that green buildings in general, they don't cost more if you look at the entire life cycle of the building, because you may be spending a little bit more on the design and construction, but eventually when it comes to implementation, your lighting loads get reduced, your HVAC loads get reduced. So when you look at the overall cost that goes into the building, it reduces, so there is basically no, the cost doesn't go higher in any case. So talking particularly about Ahmedabad, so there is no restriction as to where we can implement such policies. Ahmedabad, in fact, is one city which has been very progressive in terms of adoption of green buildings or in terms of adoption of green aspects. We have a lot of projects that are there in Ahmedabad as well. If you want more details, I can provide you that. But surely, it is not dependent on any city. You can construct green buildings irrespective of any, the density of population. It's not dependent on all these factors. But what is important is to understand is that green buildings can be constructed only when there is, the will and the understanding that yes, you have to do some fair work and you have to achieve sustainability in its holistic view. Only then you can achieve that.
True, ma'am.
So I think I have answered that.
There's one more question from Vinit Modi, sir. What is the status of green buildings in India? If you have an example for that.
This is also another interesting question that we have been talking about green buildings since 2007. But if you really ask me about the numbers, we are still to go a long way, because in spite of all the work that we do, we have more than 2,500 projects that are registered with us. If I talk about my present scenario, present data, but in terms of the number of projects that should be there, I think it should be much more than that. We are just doing 5% of the whole work that should be at least green. So you can imagine the journey that we still have to cover. And we need more and more such people to be coming in this area and taking up such initiatives in future.
Ma'am, there's one more question from Bharia, sir. Very relevant question. That currently government has started to cover up roadsides by blocks, the paver blocks, and public have covered open land with plaster. So is it advisable as per the green building code concept? Because that even a small town like us, we have seen this, that the roadsides are totally covered, totally packed with the blocks, as well as people have covered their open land with plaster or with blocks.
So I think this is also a very interesting question that government itself is not being participative. But I think what is happening is that there have to be, as I just mentioned, in case of even buildings, we have put in a lot of rules and regulations, and that is how we are ensuring that at least people are not constructing anything that they want to do. Even if in a building, we are supposed to leave certain margins in a building. You cannot have entire built up area. The covered area and the built up area are very different things in a building. So how much land you will leave in the front and the back, all these things are being regulated. Similarly, when you talk about roads or how people the presently they are getting constructed, I think we need to draw in more sense as to how these regulations can be brought into place as quickly as we can, because unless these regulations are in place, these encroachments will keep happening, and we will have very less to save for anything in future. Even we at GRIHA Council, we have started working on highway regulations, and we are going to propose that to the government. And I'm sure with the present government in place, they are really actively working on building in sustainability aspects even on the road side, in context of roads rather. So I think they'll be very happy to take it up with us.
Yeah, ma'am. I would like to share my experience, ma'am, with you, ma'am. At my home in Pune, I had observed this, that there was a building, right? And the builder had beautifully designed the building and had put glass panels on two sides of the building, and it was arranged in beautiful diamond shape. So what used to happen was during mornings and afternoon there was no issues, but during evenings, right, the sun rays were like it was like a concave mirror. The building was turning up to be like a concave mirror, and the area surrounding, or the road surrounding that building used to get a lot of heat through the reflected sun rays. So fortunately, the builder was he could listen to us, listen to the people around, and he made few changes in that building so that the reflection could be cut down.
Right.
So is there any policy that we can control such kind of construction or?
So that is what I just mentioned. I think your example is a good one to explain the audience over here. So there are two things you said here. So your project was using a lot of glass. So firstly, I'm sure mornings may not be tough, but by afternoon, your building itself inside must also be becoming like a hot box, because as I just explained you in few examples, that the basic property of the glass is that it will trap a lot of heat. So once once the sun is showing up and is becoming hotter during the day, it will trap more and more heat inside the building. And if it is a clear glass, not only will it trap heat, it will also trap a lot of glare. So a person who is sitting inside, will feel so suffocated that he will like to run out of that building, because it is not at all comfortable. Not only visually, but thermally also it is so uncomfortable. And how much of air conditioning can you do in a building? So that was inside the building. So as you rightly said, that because that mirror was acting as a concave mirror, and that was heating up the outside. Now what happens outside is a different story. Inside, you increase the temperature in any case. If it was 40, you have already made it 45 by using a wrong glass. Now what happens outside is, outside temperature was 40, but because of the mirror reflection, the outside temperature also raised to 45. Why? Because of a concept called urban heat island effect. Now that urban heat island effect is that if your surrounding patch is not able to radiate heat at the same pace as it is absorbing, then the local temperature of that climate will definitely go higher. So now a very beautiful way to explain this is that if you're driving a car in a city, and the moment you go outside your city and you're on the highway, you will feel that your temperature has lowered. You would like to lower your windows and you will like to see the fresh air coming in, because the temperature within the city and the temperature outside the city are two different things. So we have always seen that the temperatures inside the city are 2 or 3 degrees higher than outside, because of the effect of what we generally, in our terms of sustainability, we call it as urban heat island effect. Yes, surely there are rules and regulations in place. If you design a project, as I just mentioned, you cannot use more than X amount of glass in your building, the kind of glass that is there in your building. If you are able to maintain proper green cover, shading in your around your project, you can avoid all these aspects that are happening in and around your building. So this is
thank you, ma'am. It's turning out to be more and more questions are popping
yes.
up.
There are so many things. So many things that I can get into a discussion with you, but I'm sure there's very less time that we have.
Yes,
but I would love to answer this even off the presentation today.
Yes, ma'am. It's is there any government promotions for green building? Vivek Trivedi sir is asking.
Yes, government, as I just mentioned, that because it is a state subject, so a lot of state governments have adopted it. We are allowing extra FAR to projects up to 15% at a lot of state governments, like the Haryana government, the Maharashtra government, your Uttar Pradesh government, the Chhattisgarh government. They all have additional FARs for projects which are adopting green. And we have so many government projects with us who are going green. There is a reason why we want to do green, and I wish I could share my more slides on that. But I would like to tell you that not only there is a national mandate, but we have got an international mandate as well, that we all know that we emit CO2, right? We are emitting energy, and that is in form of carbon emissions. If similarly, even buildings, they emit carbon, all right? So at the global level, we are supposed to report how much CO2 emissions have been made by buildings. Now the tool to measure that will be GRIHA. GRIHA is our rating system that we have adopted, and I will talk more about it in my continued slides that I have for you all now. So when we have to report emissions at the global level, so we will be reporting these emissions at the global level, and we will say that these are the buildings who have adopted these features, and because of this emissions we have been able to save. So this is what we are doing, and there are so many policies of the government, and I can give you a list of these policies that are existing that are promoting green in so many ways.
Okay, ma'am. Anant Malia, sir, probably his question is like it's a pun to what the question I asked. He has put sick building syndrome. So I think anyway, ma'am, we can start with your session, ma'am. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
There are a few more questions. I will ask you at the end of the session, ma'am.
Sure, no issues. So as I just mentioned that we will have to now understand, we were just going into the basics of why we should do sustainability, why we should do less glass, what is the significance, so that you should understand the importance. Unless we as users don't understand the importance of building a green building, there'll be no motivation ever. We will always say, "Arey, my building is all fine. I'm using electricity. I'm using this. I'm using, I'm living in a plush area. I get, it's extremely, what you say, I've put in a lot of money in my project. I have nothing to worry." But if we don't understand the ecological damages that I've done, how much resources I have, I don't have, we will never be able to, ask for green in future. So these were the important aspects that were important for you to understand, that how much money you actually are wasting on the operations and maintenance. The example that was just given, that the builder was asked to make a few changes to ensure that the building was not getting heated up, is basically a maintenance issue, right? So after the building is constructed, after the end user has started staying in the building, only then a person comes to know that there is so much of discomfort. Then you start making changes, then a lot of money is gone into maintenance of that project. So this is all cyclic. Had you invested better, you would not have spent more on maintenance. Anyway, going further, so GRIHA basically is a green rating for integrated habitat assessment. This was a tool. Basically, we had created this tool because we had nothing to be contextualized in the Indian context. So Ministry of New and Renewable Energy and TERI, the Energy and Resources Institute, they came together, they created this tool, and basically this tool is to facilitate design, construction, operation of a green building, and in turn measures the greenness of a project. So this is the definition of a green buildings, and we are basically developed this rating on the ethos of what get measured gets managed. So I would like to explain you a bit what does this mean. So basically what happens in a building is that sometimes I hear something from here and there, from somebody, and I say, "Arey, my building is not energy efficient. Let me change a few tube lights. Let me change the air conditioner of my building, and now my building has become energy efficient or has become green." But how have you ever been able to measure it? No, because you had never created any baseline of your project. You never knew what your building was consuming before and what is your building consuming after that. It is only a mental satisfaction that I've changed the tube lights and fans and air conditioners, so my building may have become energy efficient. So this is not the way we construct or manage a green building. The proper way of doing it is that we have to measure progress at each level, and each level, then that percentage accounts for the overall progress of the project. So we can say that from 10% of energy savings, I could reach to 30%. So this is a clear benchmark to show that yes, you have achieved energy efficiency. In a lot of cases, what we have also seen, that people change things here and there, like a few tube lights, a few air conditioners, then they add a few also, and then at the end they say, array, my electricity bill hasn't reduced. So in a way, this energy efficiency doesn't work. So this is all waste of time and energy and money. So we should not invest in this. So unless we proper mechanism, it is an end user cannot come to know how much has he achieved in a project. So this is what we do. We basically measure progress at each level, and this is what we convey to you, how green you are as a project. So this is basically in a nutshell what we are. So we started rating projects, or started our journey in the year 2000, where we conducted a survey for 100 buildings, and slowly and gradually we released our ratings in 2005, where MNRE adopted us in the year 2007. In 2008, the National Mission on Enhanced Energy Efficiency was launched. Then gradually CPWD, they adopted green buildings, and they acknowledged GRIHA as an innovative tool by the UN. And then because we wanted to create a cadre of professionals who could create such buildings, we started conducting our online exams for trainers and evaluators in 2010. Then GRIHA was adopted by PCMC, that is a Pune municipal corporation, and were given premium discounts to developers and property tax rebates for buying green buildings. There is EC certification, so you get an environmental clearance, quick environmental clearance if you adopt GRIHA. Then eventually we launched ratings in 2012 for smaller ratings, smaller categories of buildings, less than 2,500 square meters. We started maintaining our own product catalog. People were not aware of what products to be used in a building. If the products that are available in the market, do they have that sustainability aspects in the product? So we took that responsibility of ensuring that the products were certified by us. And even now, if you check our website, the product catalog, you can get a list of products that are genuine and are can be easily taken from the market. Then we have developed guidelines for large developments, concessional rates for a lot of banks have given concessional rate of interest for adoption of GRIHA. Then our journey continued in 2013, where we launched the LD rating, affordable housing ratings. Then we had something for the school children. Then as you see, there are a list of incentives that various state governments have given us, including Sikkim, Punjab, Haryana, PCMC I just mentioned, then UP. Then the list continues. I think they all are listed in front of you. Somebody just mentioned about Ahmedabad, so you also get extra FAR for Ahmedabad if you construct a green building or GRIHA building in Ahmedabad. Then Madhya Pradesh Police Housing Corporation signed an MOU with us. We have so many student training programs, catalyst programs. There are a number of ways you can get associated with us to get more learning and more deeper understanding into GRIHA projects. Then we also have a segment for existing buildings, where we rate the existing buildings based on the parameters that are existing. A very successful projects we have done with the Maharashtra government, where we have done more than 200 projects, existing government buildings of Maharashtra under existing buildings category recently. We have signed some extremely successful MOUs with some of the known builders of the country, like DFL, Bestech, Adani's, Conscient, Vatika, Godrej Properties, etc. And the list continues. So I think what we are trying to explain here is that the list is indefinite, but definitely I think the intention is basically to have more and more people engaged in this journey, so that we have more projects coming up in future. I just mentioned that as a contribution to the ratings, we are supposed to report emissions on a global scale. And under the intended nationally determined contributions, India has recognized only GRIHA as the only rating. which will report its emissions, through ratings. So these are all the kind of ratings that are there with us. For built up areas of greater than 2500 square meters, we have GRIHA. For smaller categories, we have SWGRIHA. For very, very large projects, we have the LD ratings. Then we have the affordable housing category. We have the which are based on the guidelines of PMAY. Then we have a city level rating as well, which is a handbook to understand how the cities should perform in terms of sustainability. We have a very, very innovative existing buildings category of ratings for school children, where we teach school children how to calculate emissions for their own school. They do small calculations of energy, emissions, carbon footprint, and any student of the age group of 12 to 14 years can do these simple calculations. And this is the best age to teach children the concepts of sustainability, because this is what they carry home and also in their lives. And they in fact do it themselves. That makes it more acceptable. The key features of what we do over here is it's a common based rating system. There are a lot of non-applicability clauses. The places where the things don't make sense, like if water tables are already higher in certain places, we don't encourage you to store water in terms of rainwater harvesting. Similarly, other aspects of the ratings are also equally important, that it's a performance-based rating system. I just mentioned that we have so many experts working in this, to construct a green building. So there's a lot of emphasis on integrated design approach, where all the experts, they need to come together and they should understand the aspects in totality, and together only then it will make sense. It rates air conditioned, non-air conditioned, as well as hybrid projects. It's lays a lot of emphasis on cost effective strategies and of course the use of local materials. These are all the sections that are listed in our rating, which is site planning, construction management, energy, comfort, well-being, social management, sustainable materials, socioeconomic strategies, etc. Point-wise weightages are listed out here. Most of the weightage goes to water and energy, 17% to energy and 12%, 14% to water. This is the distribution of percentage. So it's a 100-point weightage system, where maximum points are given to energy and water. The rating process is quite simple. Once you register a project with us, we immediately conduct an orientation workshop. Now, this orientation workshop is extremely important, because we as GRIHA members, we go on your site, we conduct this workshop and teach, not only teach, but make you aware, which will include your structural engineers, your civil engineers, mechanical engineers, your architects, your designers, interior people. They all will have to be present in that workshop to ensure they all understand this process in totality together, and they work in their own zones to reach that common goal. And then we ourselves conduct a lot of site visits. The first site visit is done before the start of the project to ensure that all the construction practices are in place, then to ensure that the building compliances are met when the installations are happening. And after that, once the documents are submitted, then the final site visit is done to check if the systems and equipments are installed properly. Then it has been assessed by a third party to ensure that there is complete transparency in our process, and then we get a final provisional rating. The final rating of the project is awarded only once the project is 1 year operational, to understand, or basically to see if the project is also performing the way it has committed. So these are the various point-wise weightages. So you get 1-star rating from us if you score anywhere between 25 to 40 points. And if you get more than 86 points, you get a 5-star. So why do we need to talk about green? So these were the kind of buildings that we were constructing. So I would have ideally asked you where this building is, but just to give you a brief on, or I would like to answer on your behalf that these are the buildings that if such a building was to be constructed, it would have been towards a hot and dry weather where, the mud will have the basic property of, keeping the building cooler from inside. And that's the thatched roof, which would also help you keep the building cooler. Similarly, this building will be coming down south because it's there's heavy rainfall in that area, and most of it will then trickle down and will keep the building not wet. And this building is basically in Rajasthan, where there's a lot of wind velocity, so they have used a lot of chhajjas and the jalis so that they can trap the natural ventilation. So this makes sense in places where the wind flows are high. But what are we constructing now? This is another example. So this is a project that may come up, old style construction, if it was to be done in a wet area. But now how are we constructing buildings? So this is what we are constructing, and in no building we can say if it is in Jaipur or it is in South or it is in Maharashtra. They all look the same and they can be in any part of the country. So what we have lost is the general aesthetics or the general culture basically of the way we are constructing a building. The style of architecture of Rajasthan is very different from the way a building may have come up in South, or it may have come up in any part of the country. But since we are now constructing all glass buildings, so the natural beauty or the regional aspect we have lost in all the projects. So this is what we are getting, not only glass, but what we are doing is even during the day, you can clearly see that we are using blinds and artificial lighting. In spite of that, the buildings inside are quite dark. Had we used glass, and we have not used the glass in a proper way, so we are not able to even see our phone properly. So this is the disadvantage of using glass in an inappropriate way. So this is another regional specific projects, some pictures to show that how rich culturally these projects were. And this is what we are making now. So these are various technologies that were adopted in the past to ensure that the buildings were architecturally also very rich. So these are the light shells that are being used in some of the projects now to ensure that the natural water body was maintained in the project. So that's what we are trying to say, that it's not that it's completely impossible. There are certain projects that have started adopting certain things now. There's urgent action required. Definitely, green buildings. If we start taking these concepts seriously, we will know that we will have minimal impact on the site and surroundings. We don't need to damage the surrounding just by constructing one project. By constructing green buildings, we become energy efficient and maximize use of renewable energy. Green buildings basically use less water, recycle water, and reuse of water. The water is depleting at a very, very fast pace, and we need to become really serious about it. Waste is becoming another matter of concern. Solid waste segregation, a lot of places we are seeing, although this is happening, but eventually then again it is going and getting dumped at one place. So there is no point of segregation if we are not using it for the purpose it is intended. So again, we need to ensure that end to end waste is also getting managed the way it is intended. We save nearly 30 to 40% of water if we are able to recycle it and reuse that water. General well-being, we never bother about the general well-being of the construction workers and the productivity of the people on the site. So GRIHA is the only rating which has built in the social aspects of well-being of the health workers. It basically has minimal impact on the people, health and productivity of the working environment. Green buildings design calls for integrated and coordinated design approach in planning, design, construction and management. So there is difference between an energy efficient and a green building. Energy efficient building will only conserve energy, but a green building will conserve energy, water, landscape, waste generation, adoption of recycled reused material, as well as use of low energy materials. We need, why do we need green buildings? So this is quite indicative that this was something 2006, only this much of land was green, but now what we see is that the entire patch of land has become like a concrete jungle. So the way we are expanding in urban spaces, there are hardly any green spaces left, and if we are not using these resources judicially, this scenario will become quite common everywhere. And in those areas where the forest and agriculture land is being wiped out, we have this. We basically know that the role of construction and building in development is quite evident, that nearly 12% of Indian GDP is because of urban spaces. 48.8% people are going to be living out of urban spaces, and of course annual energy consumption are also quite high in urban spaces. Energy consumption growth was highest among any part of the world at 128%. India's energy consumption growth was highest among any major economies of the world. Water and waste, of course, are prevailing urban challenges. Water availability is decreased by 15% per capita by 2020. Only 26% of estimated domestic wastewater is getting treated, and nearly 42 million metric tons of solid waste is generated every day in urban spaces. So this is the kind of waste, this is the kind of water we are using, and this is the kind of water we are left with. We have certain rules or certain regulations already in place. ECBC I've already mentioned. The National Building Code 2016 volume 2, it has added a chapter on sustainability. What is required in a rating? Mandatory. It is important to imply or comply with all the aspects of the building codes that I just mentioned about ECBC. So that is, of course, the minimum benchmark that you all have to perform in order to get a rating. So going beyond the minimum benchmarks is something that ratings are promoting, that we have to do something beyond the already laid benchmarks of ECBC. It is possible to make a sustainable building without rating, but what a rating body does is that if I construct a building for myself and I say I'm satisfied, I made a green building, then there is no claim to fame. So basically we come in as a rating body. We not only rate your project, we provide you credibility, we verify your project, and in quantifiable terms we tell you how much resources you have used. So you have an authentic source of getting information from us. So green buildings are basically environmentally responsible and resource efficient projects. This is what is, in a nutshell, a definition of a green project. Reduce waste of water, minimal adverse effect on site, improve microclimate, less solid waste generation, conserve natural resources. So all these aspects are part of the environmental, economical, and social benefits that I just explained. Reduced operation cost, improved occupant productivity, create market for green products, less energy bills, improve quality of life, minimum strain on local infrastructure, because if you are reusing water inside and if you are able to harvest your own energy, then you will have minimal loading on the local infrastructure, and this will indirectly also improve your health and comfort. Now, how do you ensure that the buildings can be green? I just mentioned that certification will provide you credibility, will verify your project and quantify the project's resource consumption. But I just mentioned that it's a tool to facilitate the greenness of a project, and it rates the project on a scale of 1 to 5. And it has been developed in such a way that we'll have to measure all the emissions under this and report in terms of nationally determined contributions. Point-wise weightages I've already explained, and these are all the categories of features that are basically listed for GRIHA. Now we all are living with this myth that green buildings, they cost more. But I think what I would like to emphasize is that if you are able to reduce the energy demand of your building by designing a good building, so basically your architects will play a very important role in designing a project, then that will reduce the demand for energy by using passive features. And there are a lot of passive features that can be incorporated, like light shelves, or using the natural bodies, using your trees around you. These are all the passive features that can be taken care of when we are designing a green building. Then your building is least cost impact. It will not have any impact on the cost of the building. But what happens is, that's what I just said, that it has to be climate responsible, energy efficient envelope, daylight harvesting, integration of natural resources for cooling and heating of a building. So basically, the way you are putting up your windows, if there is enough of cross ventilation happening in your building, then you will have very, very less dependency on your artificial systems. So then your buildings will never cost more. But if you have failed to design a good project, the next option that become as a savior for your project is, then you should use energy efficient equipments. Basically, there are energy efficient labels available for major equipments that are available in the market. So necessarily the high-end consuming equipments, that is air conditioners, fans and lights, you should use labeled products only. Apart from that, for energy efficient operations and maintenance, you should use BMS systems, the building management systems, which help you to track the progress of your project. So this will have some impact on in terms of cost, because when you buy energy efficient equipment, it will be slightly higher than than a conventional product, but you will be able to recover this cost in a span of 5 to 6 years. But it will have, initial cost will be slightly higher. But if you have failed in the first two steps, that you could not do a good design, you could not put in even the good equipments, then what happens is, towards when the building is now getting occupied, then you get a mandate, just go and get my building a green certification. Then the last option that you are left with is only and only to offset energy demand by renewables. Now, although renewables is the most efficient way to conserve energy, but this is not the best way to do it, because ideally you should have followed the path of good design, equipments, and then reached here. But what people do is, they forget about the design, they don't want to do anything for equipments, and then they straight away want to just put in solar panels on the rooftop. So this sometimes works, but it is highly cost intensive strategy, and the time taken to recover this cost is very high. It may be beyond 10 to 15 years sometimes if the build project sizes are large. So I think if we all understand the economics of sustainability, we will all know that the stage at what we enter or start with thinking about sustainability is not from top to bottom, but it is not from bottom to up, but from top to bottom, where we should look at the design aspects first and then gradually move to solar, and eventually maybe if we have to put renewable, the amount of renewable that is required at the end is very small. So if you want to save money in terms of finances, then we should work on a good design. Similarly, for water, optimizing water demand, then using efficient systems, and then last of it, we should invest in a green water harvesting system. First of all, what we should always look at is how should we optimize. The demand for the project should be made in such a way that your project should only not require a lot of water. If you have not been able to do that kind of thing, if you are using a lot of green grass in your project and a lot of land water is getting wasted on only landscaping, then we cannot do much about it. But then you can use low flow fixtures, efficient water systems in your project. And if you have not been able to achieve the first two steps, the only option you are left with is to start using rainwater harvesting systems. Of course, the technology is new, and in the sense it's not new, but the cost of implementation is very high and the recovery time will be much higher. So as we have always been suggesting that you should invest in designing. So the design of any project, be it architecturally or be in terms of your systems, they all should happen at the right time. Only then will it make sense to do a green project. How does GRIHA make a difference? I just mentioned that we are the only rating body who do visual site visits. So we go ourselves on the site and do the site visits. So this is a clear example to show you how we were able to make a difference. The topsoil in the first picture was left unchecked for erosion. So they had done nothing to preserve the topsoil. And we all know that the topsoil is the most fertile soil in terms of the fertility of the soil is concerned. So we came back, we gave a non-compliance report, and this is the next day we saw that the embankments were made, the topsoil is well preserved, and vegetation was made to make it more ambient. In the third, we came back again. We saw that the preservation of topsoil, green belt developed on the green soil storage. So we have seen a gradual shift from non-compliance or a non-green environment to a completely green environment. So this has been quite impressively. We have been able to make difference when we go on the site and we visually look and we are able to comment on the aspects. Similarly, we have seen in other aspects the way the materials were maintained, how the water tanks, wheel washing facilities were added, barricading was done, and this all happened after we visited, and we suggested them ways to reduce the losses on the site, and they incorporated those things, and they were successfully able to not only reduce wastages but do less damage to the environment. So these are a few examples to show how low impact designs can help you not only aesthetically make the building look richer, but also improve the climate inside the project. Very, very cheap techniques to ensure that the rainwater is getting harvested. There is no wastage. At least the rainwater gets preserved. Simple rock bedding is being provided to ensure that if there is any rains, then water gets conserved. We just talked about urban heat island effect. We have seen that there are technologies. So I was mentioning about preserving the local trees. So the building on your right over here is an IIT campus. They have preserved the local trees, and not only are they improving the microclimate of the project, but if you can clearly see, they are also providing a natural shading to each project. So it looks like these buildings are living naturally very close to the nature. Similarly, the project to your left has developed basically the contours where greenery is maintained. Your green covers has been maintained in such a way that the microclimate is improved. So these are a few visuals of the air and water pollution, how people have shown interest in having good site management practices. They have different storage compartments for cements, fuels, and other wastages that were saved just by doing demarcations of the materials. You can clearly see that the material was covered and not left for it to just wash off with rains. Proper barricading to ensure that there is no air pollution to the nearby site. The topsoil is being preserved by gunny bags, and they have also done planted green grass, temporary green grass, to ensure that the topsoil doesn't run off. The trees are preserved, and we are not stacking any materials under that, and we are barricading this tree to ensure that this tree can be used in future. This is a clear example to show that how materials can also be safely kept on a site in a proper way, and not kept in a way that it gets not only wasted, but also gets damaged by environmental conditions. Various ways of achieving occupant comfort and well-being is to reduce the window to wall ratio. Amount of glass that can be used in a project is basically a definition that is addressed here, that is window to wall ratio, skylight to roof ratio, solar heat gain coefficient, ensuring good daylight inside a project, optimal artificial lighting in a project, optimal thermal comforts, optimal acoustic comforts, and low VOC paints are all aspects which lead to occupant comfort and well-being. So this is we always say that the IT projects, they consume more, but this is an Infosys project which clearly shows that by a good design, as you can clearly see, they are not using any much of the day lighting, much of the artificial lighting during the day, but are using the natural ventilation, natural daylight to ensure that each desk is well lit and no one is at any discomfort. These are light shells, and your shadings are being provided so that the glass doesn't bring in a lot of glare, and there are enough light shells that are provided so that enough light can penetrate into the building. So in green projects, we emphasize on the need to reduce and to reuse. So basically, we reduce by using water fixtures and landscape design. We shouldn't put a lot of grass. I think this is a myth that green buildings means that we should start putting in grass, but grass is not an alternative of greenness in a project. Rather, we should use native trees and bushes, and there has to be patches in which the way greenness has to be maintained in a project. Similarly, rainwater has to be harvested and recycled of the wastewater. This is how we should emphasize these two aspects in a project. So this is what I was just saying, that greenery doesn't mean that we start putting in grass. So this is a classic example to show how trees and small bushes and plants can help you not only enhance the greenery in your project, but also to maintain the aesthetics of your projects. So this is how we are maintaining the water quality by using water filters, and then rainwater recharging is been done in such a way that the contours are maintained, and if there is rain, then these beds will be able to absorb maximum water, if there is rain. In terms of using sustainable materials, this is the journey of any material that we use in a project: extraction, processing, transportation, use, and demolition. Now, this is something that is not encouraged. This steps goes away. So what we want to do now is extraction, processing is already there. After use, we want to promote recycling and reuse so that the same material can be a raw material for some other industry and can be reused in the same sector. So this is what is an efficient material management system: using recycled material, using less material, and using industrial waste. So these are a few examples to show how the wastages in terms of materials were able to reduce in certain, even small projects have been able to reduce wastages in their projects. This is an eco Govardhan village which have used clay bricks. In terms of the bigger projects, these are hollow bricks, and these are large scale constructions that are happening, in which these projects have implemented these hollow bricks in a successful way. Waste management, we need to reuse organic waste to the maximum, segregate waste, and reduce the construction waste. These are the three principles that we want to promote. Avoid post-construction landfills. We shouldn't dump waste outside our project and say that we have successfully done the project. We should have segregation bins installed at all, even during construction and even after construction, and should then get delivered at the right places. So these are the various percentages of organic waste that are getting generated, and maximum of it is the organic waste. And by just doing simple segregation, we can convert it into compost and use it for community services as manure. Plastic should go to plastic scrap, and disposal of safety things like the medicinal waste and the medical waste and other electronic waste, if it goes to the right places, it can be then reused. Only a very small percentage which is not usable, that is also less than 10% should go into the landfill of the entire waste that we are generating. There are various ways in which we can do these small little things at our home. For home composting, we have small instruments like khamba, leave-it pot, and prithvi khamba, which helps to convert organic waste to manure. And for larger projects, we have the bigger these systems that are available to convert it into manure. So we just talked about labor safety and sanitation. This is one aspect which only GRIHA takes into account, that no one cares about how labor has been, taking care of on the site. And this is a very common site that we have seen, that they are living in below living standard conditions on the site.
Ma'am, sorry to interrupt you, ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah, ma'am. We are running out of time, ma'am. So
Yes.
if
I'll
you can
just wind
conclude.
up in another 2
Yes,
minutes.
ma'am. And ma'am, we have 3 to 4 questions, so we can
Sure.
take them. Okay.
Okay. So just a few pictures and I'll wind up that, we can do a lot, to even the people who are working on the site. We can have good water facilitation. This is pictures, visuals from our own site, where they are given good, proper, houses to live, houses of guards and maintenance people. They have got proper rooms to stay out of, and there are a lot of awareness campaigns that can be created to generate more awareness for the end user. And I will not go into details of my other ratings, but I will leave it with you, these presentations, to understand that these are other ratings that are available with us. The GRIHA ratings, these are for small houses, can be used by people on their own. They need not go to architects and builders. You can do your calculations and calculate the energy consumptions and how green you are for yourself. And these are snapshots of the tool that looks like a few of pictures of a few GRIHA projects, small houses that have got ratings from us. And some technologies available, reuse of materials, some waste beatings was used to make some doors. Large developments are basically there to understand or design larger features like STPs or HVACs, so that if you are doing the planning at the right time, then the wastages are very less. Various sections of large development categories, not going into details, but definitely you should check our website. This is a website for green ratings, and we'll explore more on what we can do. The product catalog I just mentioned, you can get an access to the materials that you can use in your project. You can get more understanding. And that is all. Thank you so much. And yes, I'm ready to take a few questions now. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, there are a few questions from Amit sir. One question is, what are the major challenges in green building construction in India?
Well, a few of the challenges I just mentioned, I think the biggest challenge, we should look at it from various aspects. From a green building expert aspect, I feel that the greatest challenge is that a developer doesn't want to do the real work of green. They just want to do
Yes.
tick box, and they want to just say that, we have done a green project, but no one wants to really care about if he has really implemented the things on site. But we as a rating body, we really get a pushback from these developers because they are always harsh with us that GRIHA does a lot of compliances. You keep coming to our site, and why do you keep checking on us? But what we feel is, if we don't keep our checks and balances, these green features will never be met, and the end user will never be able to achieve those, or will never get the benefits what he's looking at. So this is
Very
the
true.
biggest challenge that we see, that to push or motivate them is not easy. And I think we as a rating body take that entire responsibility, and we do as much as we can and do justice to this work. So that is one challenge. And definitely uh, the another challenge is from the end user. I think if the end user starts demanding green, then we will see more and more
Yes, yes,
such
yes.
projects coming in future. If you and I are aware of such aspects, that green buildings cost less, they are more beneficial, health wise they are beneficial, maintenance costs are less, operation costs are less. If you start understanding these terms and how you are doing justice to the environment, and in future your electricity bills are reduced, you are at a win-win situation. If you start demanding green, then there'll be a lot of pressure on these green building developers to only produce green projects. So I think we are still in those challenging times, that only we as green building experts are pushing for green. If it becomes a two-way communication, then it is very easy to turn the tables around and make the things work.
Thank you, ma'am. There is one more question. What is the best and most accurate software for energy simulation in buildings?
There is no accurate softwares. There are a number of softwares that are available, and simulations are basically predictive numbers. So whichever softwares you are aware of, there is Ecotech, there is Econirman, then all these software give you a number that is very close to real, but you can only be real if you achieve those numbers. But I'm sure they all give you some level of, at least accuracy levels are almost the same for everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. I think there are no more questions.
Right. Thank you so much. And I leave these presentations for you all. If anyone
Yes,
has
ma'am.
any further questions, you may reach out to me.
Thank you.
My
Thank you.
email addresses and all are mentioned over there. Please
Yes,
feel
ma'am.
free to even conduct any future trainings or in detail trainings. We are very happy to do that for you.
Yeah, sure, ma'am. I'll just present a vote of thanks, ma'am. Just a minute, ma'am. Dear participants, we had a very extremely brainstorming session, very stimulating session. So I thank you, Ms. Shabnam Bassi, ma'am, on behalf of the BNB Institute of Technology, the organizing committee of the Faculty Development Program, and the participant. I extend my heartfelt gratitudes to you for taking your time out and accepting our invitation and obliging. Today, being a holiday, I again thank you very much for taking the time out. So thanks a lot. Your presentation was very informative, and I'm sure that participants would have learned a lot from it. I'm
Thank
sorry that due to some limitations, we couldn't make this session more interactive. Keeping the things that you have discussed today, the 17 sustainable development goals,
you.
and even if we do little changes in our
Right.
day-to-day
Right.
lifestyle, our home environment, I think we will be able to save and conserve
Right.
energy as well as improve our livability.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
One of the pictures that you showed of our greens depleting is really very concerning, and I think if we don't act now, then it will be too late.
Right.
Because I still remember in 80s when I was studying, we had that Doordarshan used to have a have that animation video of saved trees. And I
Yes.
think from that time onwards, that is the only thing that we have not done.
Right.
So, so I think it's high
It's not
time that
only
we.
about trees now, it's also about water. I mean,
Yes, true, true.
we are not understanding that water is also depleting at a very fast pace, and we don't
Yes, yes,
have a lot of reserves of fresh water anyway.
yes,
So
ma'am.
if our projects start harvesting water, if we conserve at least water for our own self, I mean, we will save ourselves for future.
Yes, ma'am. So
Thank you
thanks a
so
lot,
much.
ma'am. Thank you once again for enlightening us and sharing your valuable experience with us. Thank you, ma'am. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you all. Thank you once
Thank
again.
you.
Bye.
Bye.